Welcome back, CSE 121, to part 2 of our EX27 attendees list that we're working on, and we're setting up the GUI so far, and it's not doing anything yet. And this is the last thing we did. We kind of had this set up, our first 4 rows of our grid set up, which is like a table, and we're just going to finish it off. So I'll close that up. And again, looking at our sample, we're doing the last 4, which is going to be this label 4, entry 3, label 5, and then a button here. And I already have these set up. I have my spacer labels right here. So there's 4 and 5, and they're exactly like label 3, so I just threw them in here. So that just kind of initializes them. So I have lab 4, lab 5, they're set up. They all have the same light blue background color, so you don't really notice they're there. We have an entry field, which is set up just like the other entry fields. And we have one more button, which is BTN3, which is just like the other buttons as well, except it says add attendee. And then for our grid, see if I added them all to the grid, we have label 1, label 2, and then entry 1, entry 2, and then a label 3, and then a button 1, button 2. And then what we're going to need to do is add the rest of our grid in here. So this is the rest of our grid. Here's these last things down here. You can see we have label 4, which is a spacer. And then we have our entry grid, our entry, which is an entry field, ENT3, and that's in row 5. If we take a look here, we can see that ENT3 is in row 5, and that's actually going to span 2 columns, and we're also going to throw a sticky on there, so it kind of stretches it out. We have both a column span 2 and a sticky east plus west. They actually put a plus sign in there, and that's in row 5, so that's our entry. That's where the first name and last name is going to get put together in there. And then our label 5 is just a spacer, so it's just sitting in between the last button. And then our last button in here is in row 7, and it takes up column 1, which is the one on the right, and it's a sticky equals east, so it should actually push to that side. So this should finish up at least our visual part of it without anything working yet. I'm going to run it again. And here it is. And now you could type things in here, but nothing's going to happen yet because we didn't put any kind of events on our buttons yet. But this is exactly what it should look like. And we're going to put an event here for insert. So people will be able to enter stuff in here. And then when they hit insert, the name will get concatenated or just, kind of put together. First and last name will get put together here. That won't really do anything. But then eventually we're going to hit add attendee, and that will get added to our attendees CSV file and kind of make it a little more functional. Otherwise, this is just kind of, window dressing, just kind of playing around with fields. But that makes it a little more functional that we can actually add it to a CSV file. So that's what we'll be doing next. So let's start doing that. The first part we're going to do is we're going to take this information that gets added in here, and we're just going to put it down there. So we're going to put an action or an event on our insert button, which is actually button 1, I believe, button 2. And if you're not sure, check your button 2, and that's the insert one. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a function. So we're going to have to go up here and create a function. We'll do that before everything. And our first one we'll call def, and we'll call it show name, because that's all it's going to do. It's just going to show the name. And this will just be set up like regular Python code. And what we're going to do first is we're going to create a variable that gets the information from the fields. So we're going to call a variable called first equals, and then I'll have a variable called last equals. And then what will be in here from the entry, it's going to be ent1. So we're going to say ent1 dot get. So we're kind of getting the value. It's kind of like a HTML form where JavaScript can get the value of it, of an entry form or an entry text entry field. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll copy this and I'll put this here, and that'll be entry 2. So we're getting the information from these. And then we can even make another, if we want to put it all together, we could do something called like full name, and we'll just put those together first. I think we could just do it last, because that'll put a space in between there. And then what we'll do is we'll display full name in that field, which is ENT3. Remember this one here, this is where the full name is going to display. So we're going to have to display it there. So we're going to have to insert. We're also going to have to do a delete, so it kind of clears it out first. So that's why we'll have 2 things in there. But we're really going to have something like ENT3, and we're just going to have to put a range in here, like 0, I think, full name. From the start to the end of the variable in there, that's what's going to be put in there. And then we can also put a delete in here too. We're going to put ent3.delete, and that basically clears it out so we don't add on to anything if we do it a second time. That's why we're doing that. It's not necessary right away, but we'll put that in there. And just so you understand the syntax of this, they have 0, and you can't ignore this, to end, meaning that's the entire field. So it's going to kind of wipe that out before you insert anything in there, and every time you do that. So this is show name. So we're making a variable that's getting the information from entry 1 and entry 2. So whatever you type in entry 1 and entry 2, you're getting that information, and then we're just going to put it here and display it. And that's all that we're going to do right now. So where that's going to be, that event is going to occur, is actually going to be on down here on button 2, the one that says insert, and we're just going to put a comma, and we're going to put command, like we did on our previous exercise, equals, and it's just show name, and it doesn't have a parentheses. So it doesn't have that. So don't put that. Make sure, well, you need 1 at the end, but make sure you don't have the extra parentheses there. So that puts an event on that button. So when we click that button, it should fire off this or call this function that's happening up here. So let's see what happens here. I'll put in Steve Austin, who is the $6 million man, and we'll put insert, and there it is. Oh, I put an E on there, but that's okay. That's Steve Austin. And now we didn't do anything with this button. We didn't do anything with that button. And what we'll probably do with this add another is just kind of make this into a clear. And actually, maybe I'll do that first before we end part 2 of the video. We'll do one more button, which will be a clear. And this is pretty easy because now that we have this set up, I'm just going to copy this, and I'll have a second function, and I'll just call it clear. And all that's going to do is wipe out all those fields. So it's going to delete the entry field, and then it's also going to delete entry 1 and 2. So it's just going to clear out all 3 of these fields. And where that's going to occur is going to be on button 1, the one that says, currently it says add another. You know, you could even put clear. Maybe I'll just put clear. That'll make more sense if we put that on there. And then I'll just copy my command here. And the command is going to be clear, so it runs the clear function. And there it is. So I'll put marky mark, and I'll put insert, and that works. And I'll do clear, and that works. So we have 2 of our buttons working. Our most complicated button is going to be the one for add attendee. That's actually going to take the information from these 2 fields. It probably won't even do anything with this. It'll just take these 2 fields, and then it's going to throw them into here, and we're going to do it as a list. So we're actually going to first make it a list and then throw them in there. So that'll be part 3 where we'll do that. So we have this working pretty well, and we're going to introduce something new, the CSV, and I won't do a whole lot with that. I'll just go over it briefly, but that'll be in part 3.